Most people choose an anti-detect browser the wrong way. They pick the one with the loudest advertising, the cheapest monthly price, or the one an affiliate video called undetectable, and then wonder why their accounts still end up linked. The choice is not really about which tool has the longest feature list. It is about which parts of the machine story a tool keeps consistent for you, and how well the whole thing fits the way you actually work. Today I want to walk through how to choose an anti-detect browser on purpose. The questions worth asking before you pay, so you end up with the tool that matches your workload. Quick note on framing before I start. I run real proxy and cloud phone farms, and I test these browsers hands on the way multi-accounters actually use them. So I have bought the wrong tool for a job before and learned the selection criteria. I am keeping this practical and defensive, how to evaluate a browser, not a recipe against any platform. And there are no undetectable promises anywhere here. The right tool removes contradictions from your setup. It does not make anything invisible, unbannable, or risk-free. Choosing well lowers one category of mistake. It does not carry the whole operation for you. Start with the question almost nobody asks: what problem you actually have? How many profiles are you going to run? 5 or 500? Is it just you, or a team with several sets of hands? Are you clicking through everything by hand, or driving it with scripts? Do your accounts live on the desktop web, or on phone-first platforms? The best tool for a solo person running 10 profiles by hand is almost never the best for an agency running 1,000 through an API. Name your real workload first, then match a tool to it, because every criterion after this depends on that answer. The core of any of these tools is fingerprint quality, but you cannot take the sales page's word for what that means. What matters is not how many values you can change, it is whether they hold together as one believable machine. A browser that spoofs the canvas, the web renderer, and the font list, but then lets them disagree with the operating system it claims to be, is worse than a simpler tool that changes less and keeps the story coherent. So before you trust any tool, put one of its profiles in front of the public fingerprinting checks yourself and read what a detector would actually see. That leads straight to the most important idea in this whole decision. Consistency beats a pile of knobs. A long menu of toggles photographs well in a review, but a detector does not score how many things you spoofed. It scores whether the pieces agree. The platform, the canvas, the web renderer, the fonts, the time zone, the language, all of it has to tell one consistent story about a single plausible machine. So judge a browser on the coherence it produces, not on the length of its settings panel. The next criterion is proxy integration, because the browser is only half of your identity, and the network is the other half. Look at how cleanly the tool binds a proxy to each individual profile, whether it supports the proxy types you actually use, residential, mobile, SOCKS 5, or plain HTTP, and whether it locks the profile's time zone and locale to the proxy's exit automatically. A tool that makes per-profile proxy assignment fiddly pushes you into shortcuts, like reusing one proxy across profiles, which is exactly how a careful setup links its own accounts. Smooth proxy handling is central, not a luxury. Then think about profile management at your scale, which is the boring criterion that turns out to matter most once you grow. When you run 5 profiles, you barely notice the management surface. When you run 500, that surface is most of your working day, and a tool that forces you to touch every profile by hand becomes unusable long before you hit your real number. Look for folders, tags, notes, and bulk actions like assigning proxies to many profiles in one move. Unglamorous, and it is where scale actually lives or dies. And the ideal fork in the road is where your profiles are stored on your own machine or synced through the vendor's cloud. The cloud approach makes team sharing and working across several devices genuinely easy. But you are trusting the vendor to hold your profile data. The local approach keeps that data on your own hardware, which some operators prefer, but sharing and moving between machines get harder. Neither is universally correct, and anyone who tells you their storage model is simply the safe one is selling. Match it to whether you need a team, whether you move between machines, and how you feel about a vendor holding your profiles. If more than one person will ever touch these accounts, team features stop being a nice extra and become a hard requirement. What you are checking for is real profile sharing and transfer built into the tool, along with role-based permissions so not everyone can change everything. As a buying criterion, the point is simple. A tool without proper sharing forces your team to copy profile files between machines, and copying files is one of the fastest ways to cross-link a whole set of accounts. So if you have a team, the quality of that sharing is close to the first thing you should test. If you automate, and a lot of serious operators do, check what the tool gives you to script against. Some expose a local automation port or an API that hooks into the common browser automation frameworks, and the important part is whether that automated session still writes the profile's fingerprint and proxy rather than leaking the raw machine underneath. A tool you can only drive by hand is fine for manual work and a wall for anyone scripting. So decide which side of that line you are on before you pay, because bolting automation onto a tool never built for it is misery. Mobile emulation deserves its own check if your accounts live on phone-first platforms. Desktop profiles are the default that every tool does reasonably, but a genuine mobile profile is much harder, because a real phone differs from a desktop far below the surface in its fonts, its screen characteristics, its hardware signals, not just in the user agent string. Plenty of tools claim mobile support and only repaint the surface, leaving a desktop machine wearing a phone's name tag, which is a contradiction a detector reads immediately. So if you need mobile, do not trust the checkbox on the pricing page. Build a phone profile and test whether it holds together as a phone. Pricing sounds like the simplest criterion, and it is the one that ambushes people, because what matters is not the entry price, but how it grows with your real number of profiles and seats. Some tools charge per profile, some per seat, some a flat rate up to a cap and then a cliff. A plan that looks cheap at 10 profiles can be brutal at 200, and a tool expensive to start can be the cheaper one at scale. So do the arithmetic at the number you actually plan to run, not the number in the headline tier, and read what the free tier includes before anything else. The single most useful habit here is to use the free tier or trial as your test bench instead of choosing from reviews alone. Spin up one profile, load it through a real proxy of the kind you will actually use, and run it against public fingerprint tests and leak checks. Reload it several times and confirm the values hold still, rather than shifting between reads, and that the fingerprint agrees with the platform the profile claims. What a sales page promises and what those checks show are often two different things, and half an hour of testing before you commit is worth more than any amount of star ratings. Look hard at update cadence and support, because detection does not sit still, and neither can a tool that wants to keep working. A browser that is actively maintained keeps pace as the checks evolve, while one that has gone quiet lets your profiles drift out of agreement without anything visibly changing on your side. So find out how often the tool ships updates, and whether support answers in reasonable time. A cheaper tool that has quietly stopped being developed is far more expensive than it looks the month your whole profile set starts leaking and nobody is home to fix it. Reputation and community are worth weighing, as long as you hold them at arm's length. A tool that many operators actively use and argue about tends to get its weaknesses found and patched faster than an obscure one. But this space is thick with affiliate marketing, and the word undetectable is a sales term, not a property any browser possesses. Let the community point you at candidates, then let your own tests decide between them, because the person praising a tool is very often paid to say it. It helps to keep a short list of red flags that should lower your trust rather than raise it. Any tool that promises its profiles are undetectable, that your accounts can never be banned, or that guarantees an income if you buy it, is telling you something no browser can honestly deliver, because your behavior and your account's history matter as much as the fingerprint does. Loud and detectable language is not a feature, it is a reason to slow down. The tools I trust most describe their limits plainly instead of promising the impossible. Calm and specific beats loud and absolute. And be clear-eyed about what even a well-chosen tool does not do. because this reframes the whole purchase. The best browser in the world does nothing about how you behave inside an account, how aged and warmed your accounts are, or the pattern of your activity over time. It keeps the device story and the network story coherent, which removes a real category of contradiction, and that is genuinely valuable. But it is one layer, not the whole operations, so do not choose one expecting it to carry the parts that were always going to be your responsibility. A tool cannot buy you patience or good habits. Put it together and the choice usually resolves cleanly once you are honest about your workload. A solo operator running a modest number of profiles by hand on the desktop needs a simpler, cheaper tool with clean profile proxy binding and genuinely coherent fingerprints, and very little else. An agency running at scale with a team, automation, and phone-first accounts needs to pay up for real sharing, proper permissions, an API, believable mobile emulation, and a vendor that keeps up. Buying far more tool than your workload needs wastes money on features you never touch, and buying under it quietly caps how far you can grow. Number founder Pinye. Here is the short sequence I would run before paying. Name your real workload first: profiles, people, automation, and mobile. Trial the fingerprint coherence yourself against the public checks rather than trusting the page. Confirm the proxy binds cleanly per profile and locks the time zone to the exit. Check that management holds up at the number you actually intend to run. Confirm real team sharing if anyone else is involved, and real automation if you script. Read the price at your true scale, not the headline tier, and confirm the tool is still being actively updated. Run that sequence, not the advertisements, and you will choose well. So choosing an Antidetect browser is less about chasing the longest feature list and more about matching a coherent, well-maintained tool to the workload you honestly have, and testing that coherence yourself before you pay. Which tools actually keep their story together under hands-on testing, and which ones just hand you a wall of knobs and an undetectable promise, is written up in full with no undetectable promises anywhere in the tested reviews and the picks I actually trust at antidetectreview.org. If this gave you a clearer way to choose, subscribe for more honest, tested Antidetect browser reviews, and I will see you in the next one.